Let's have a new addition to our group, Mr. Joe Smith. Uh, Joe is belongs to an organization in Britain called Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism. It's a socialist organization. Fantastic. You can see Joe holding up his the poster of his organization there. He is from the Birmingham branch of Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism. And his website is www.revolutionarycommunist.org. This is very interesting for me because in India, we got to know about this system because the case of the real life Mrs. Chatterjee in Norway was taken up by a communist, a sitting member of the upper house of our parliament from the Communist Party of India, Marxist, Brinda Karat. And she has an organization called the All India Democratic Women's Association, and they have played a very active role in helping families whose children have been taken away. And I can see that at least one of their members is on this Zoom with us, Memuna. I urge everyone, particularly in the Support Not Separation Network and IDWA, to get in touch with Joe after this meeting because I see a lot of synergy between, the approach of all three of you. On to you, Joe.
That is awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, so as you say, I'm Joe. I'm from the Revolutionary Communist Group. Here with our newspaper, Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism, which is also what we call our supporters group and our wider periphery. On the back of this issue, you can actually see there's Yusuf with us at a demonstration against state racism. He's got like a placard that he wears that outlines the story, and like we encourage people to take photos of it. Yes, I want to thank you so much for putting on this event for an important issue that I think is not so often discussed in Britain, at least, and for letting me speak at it. I'm going to talk a little bit about our organisation, who we are and why we do what we do, and then move on to the work we've done with Yusuf on migrant families being separated from their kids and how that work came about for us. It might seem a little bit irrelevant at first, but I promise you it gets there. So we're a Marxist-Leninist organisation who, among other things, aim to tackle racism by confronting its origins within imperialism. So Britain, as an imperialist country, through foreign direct investments and predatory international loans, extracts wealth from countries around the world. And this extractivism through finance capital actually generates more profit for the ruling capitalist class in Britain than all of domestic production put together, several times over, in fact. And this fact is something that's becoming more true over time and not less. And this drives an international inequality that then drives people to want to leave those impoverished nations. The British state then uses racism both to scapegoat for the effects of attacks on the living standards of the working class within Britain, by saying stuff like, oh, you can't get healthcare or housing because of immigrants. And this distracts from the real causes in profiteering and privatization. Simultaneously, it uses racism to justify a deeper attack on the living standards of the working class around the world through national indebtedness, war, and racist immigration laws, as well as a particularly strong attack on minority groups living within the imperialist core. We were actually having a speak out against this state racism and these new and existing racist immigration laws in the city of Birmingham, where we're from, when we met Yusuf. And Yusuf explained this aspect of state racism that I personally hadn't come across much before, that being of migrant families, particularly non-white migrant families, being separated from their children after struggling to get support. And it turned out, of course, as we know, to be a much bigger issue than this single devastating instance that he was going through. And we also found out that this had happened to Yusuf after I believe he tried to reach out to charities and support after having issues with his job and work visa. So we can see how it starts to connect with austerity and cuts and state racism. From there, we found out about the campaign Support Not Separation, which of course talks a lot about how cuts to services and welfare are exacerbating the existing financial and social difficulties faced by both migrant and disabled parents. But rather than addressing the lack of support, councils across Britain make it out to be a problem with the parent, right? Deeming them to be unfit and taking their kids away from them. This is not only, of course, devastating and dehumanizing, but it excuses the systematic problems of diminishing support for struggling families. This is quite deliberately, in my view, creating a hostile environment to make it even harder for people with existing difficulties navigating society because of cultural differences, differences in ability, in wealth, and trying to normalize that through racism and ableism and so on, and then make it out to appear as though the fault is inherent with the parent and not a social issue. This is also what happened to Yusuf's family, who, when they rarely get to speak with their children, aren't allowed to do so in their mother tongue. They have to talk to them in English. Yusuf's wife also had to leave the country for fear of having her, at the time, unborn child taken away from her. And that's a reflection of how incapable the state believes people are of change, of self-improvement, and while not affording people the opportunity to do so because of these cuts to social services. So our branch in Birmingham is still relatively small, but with Yusuf, we've been having more speak outs against state racism and helping Yusuf add to the material he already has, like the placard around his neck, helping him make flyers, and linking the material he's making with some of the videos that Saranya has made to try and help raise public awareness and consciousness about this issue, and also to try and grow our branch so that we can do even more to directly confront the council and the racism we can see within child services. Because the reality is that particularly first generation migrant families, far from being the causes of how tough it is to access services and welfare, are actually some of the most acute victims of it. Decades of cuts to public services under both Conservative and Labour governments have, I think, worsened this issue of people being separated from their families in the absence of wider support. And unfortunately, Birmingham City Council has just announced massive cuts to things like child support services. And in Birmingham, Bangladeshi and Somali communities, among other minority communities, are some of the poorest in the city, and so the most in need of these services, meaning this issue could get a lot worse, and meaning it's even more important for us to be visible and outspoken on the issue. Hopefully I've made it clear then that this is an issue of racism, and so it is an issue of imperialism. It's an issue of capitalism, and so it is an issue of the need to organise for socialism. And that agitation, education and organisation are the tasks we face today, and that we can hopefully continue to grow and make conferences like this bigger and more frequent. The British state's horrific support for the genocide in Palestine are waking people up to the realities of imperialism and of state racism, and so present us opportunities to counteract the racist narratives we're seeing in the day to day. If you want to know more about our group, to read our analysis, to contribute to it even through articles and guest letters, please go to our website, revolutionarycommunist.org, which I'll link in the chat. I've already heard some interesting stuff from Heidi that makes me want to write another article about this. So, I'm definitely going to do that. Thank you very much for giving me the chance to speak.
Thank you so much, Joe. I would love to write in your publication, actually, and I think others on the group as well. So do put us on your mailing list. I mean, if everyone agrees, you can let me know, and I'll send your emails around to Joe and to others in the group so that you can keep this conversation going throughout the year. And I'll talk. We'll come back to Yusuf's case. I'm still trying to get hold of him. But imagine the challenges, Yusuf is not making enough money to have a very expensive, versatile phone. So, it was a challenge for him to even find a way of, getting into this seminar. He only downloaded Zoom today after asking around. And when Joe contacted him and invited him to attend these demonstrations with him, with his story, he writes to me from Birmingham all the way in Delhi to give him the text that he can put on his placard, because English is not his language at all. I can't even call it his second language. And so you're placing families into a process which is essentially a legal process, and they don't even have the minimum means to participate in it. And the most heartbreaking experience that I had with Yusuf a few years ago is when, hearings were taking, his court hearing had taken place. All day he was at the hearing, and it was the month of Ramzan. And these hearings, you have the social worker is just rolling her eyes all the time. And, it's all nudge, nudge, wink, wink between the social worker and the judge. Absolutely shameless. And Yusuf goes through this for about, 6 excruciating hours. And then I got a message, desperate message from him saying that the library had shut. And so he wasn't able to get in touch with his wife in Singapore. And would I please tell her that he was okay because he was now too weak from his fasting to, try and call her and get the message across. And I was just sitting there looking at my phone with my stomach churning and not knowing, is he going to faint? All alone out there. It's absolutely horrible. So thank you for helping him, Joe. On behalf of all my countrymen, I thank you.